Paper money is such a familiar part of our world that we rarely pause to realize how strange it truly is. You can't eat it. You can't build a house with it. You can't forge a sword out of it. Yet it controls nations, ends empires, starts wars, and determines who rises and who falls. But the most shocking truth about paper money is this: it was never designed. It was stumbled into, accidentally, desperately, and sometimes foolishly. To understand how paper money nearly brought down civilization more than once, we have to go back over 1,000 years, long before Wall Street or central banks, long before the dollar or the euro, long before the modern world even had a modern economy. It begins in ancient China, a place where the markets were so vibrant, so massive, so alive that the economy itself became too heavy to carry. During the Tang dynasty, China used metal coins as currency, round pieces of bronze with a square hole in the middle, reliable, durable, but unbelievably impractical for a booming empire. The larger the population grew, the heavier money became. Literally, a wealthy merchant needed pounds of coins just to trade simple goods. Caravans had to load barrels of coins on ox carts, and if someone owed you a large payment, they wouldn't hand you a bag. They'd send a wagon. That was the first great crack in the foundation of metal money. Prosperity made wealth impossible to move. And then came the second crack. The mines began to fail. Copper shortages struck. Bronze coins became scarce, trade slowed, prices wobbled. The empire risked choking on its own success. So the merchants, as they often do, solved the problem before the government even noticed the problem existed. Traveling merchants in Sichuan, unable to carry huge loads of coins, began leaving their metal with powerful trading houses, essentially the ancestors of banks. In return, they received a piece of paper acknowledging the deposit. At first, these were simple receipts, nothing more. But when these receipts started changing hands in the markets, accepted by farmers, traders, craftspeople, something extraordinary happened. Paper stopped being a receipt and became money. Not because an emperor commanded it, not because scholars designed it, not because the government planned it, but because people, in their daily lives, found paper more useful than metal. This should have been the moment when humanity realized that money is not an object. It's an agreement. When the Song dynasty took control, they adopted the people's invention and turned it into state policy. They standardized the notes. They printed them with official stamps. They created the world's first government-backed paper currency. For a brief time, it was brilliant. Trade exploded. Markets expanded. Taxes became easier to collect. And China became the most financially advanced civilization on Earth. But that brilliance lasted only as long as something even more fragile than paper: discipline. The Song government, like every government that would follow, discovered a temptation too powerful to ignore. Why mine copper? Why raise taxes? Why borrow at interest? Why anger the public when you can simply print more money? At first the printing was modest, then generous, then reckless. Merchants noticed first. Prices shifted. People began demanding silver instead of paper. Suspicion grew quietly like rot beneath a floorboard. Then inflation arrived, slow at first, then violent. Suddenly what you earned in the morning had lost value by nightfall. Families stopped saving. The wealthy converted their notes to gold. Farmers hoarded food. And trust, the oxygen of any financial system, began to vanish. When the Mongols conquered China, they inherited a currency that was already unstable. But instead of fixing it, Kublai Khan saw paper money as a tool of absolute power. He outlawed metal currency. He made paper notes the only legal tender. He printed whatever amount he needed to fund wars and expansion. Marco Polo visited China during this time and described paper money as though witnessing a miracle. Money created from the bark of trees, accepted everywhere by imperial decree. But a miracle becomes a curse when it defies reality. The Mongols printed until the notes became worthless. Entire regions collapsed into barter. Economic activity froze. Peasants refused paper and demanded food-for-food exchanges. The empire's revenue evaporated because the money it collected had no value. The Yuan dynasty collapsed under the weight of worthless currency. And the Ming dynasty, traumatized by the disaster, banned paper money entirely. Imagine that. The most advanced monetary invention in history, destroyed so catastrophically that a whole civilization swore to never use it again for generations. But the idea of paper money had already escaped China's borders, and like a spark drifting across a dry forest, it landed in Europe. Europe in the 1600s was nothing like China. It was poorer, less centralized, and far less experienced with financial innovation. So when Sweden first introduced paper money in 1661, it quickly spiraled into disaster. The issuing bank printed too much, redemption failed, confidence collapsed, and Sweden suffered one of Europe's earliest modern financial crises. France's experiment was even worse. In the early 1700s, a Scottish gambler named John Law convinced the French regent that paper money would fix the kingdom's debt crisis. He printed aggressively, inflated the stock market, inflated land prices, inflated public expectations, and then everything crashed. The Mississippi bubble wiped out fortunes, shattered trust, and helped ignite the financial instability that would eventually fuel the French Revolution. Across the Atlantic, the American colonies printed their own money, continental dollars, which collapsed in value so dramatically that not worth a continental became a national joke. Every society that tried paper repeated the same mistakes China had made, because the weakness was never the paper itself. It was human nature. Paper wasn't dangerous. Greed was. Impatience was. The belief that you can create value by printing symbols of value. That was the curse. Fast forward to the 20th century. Germany printed itself into oblivion during the Weimar hyperinflation, where families carried banknotes in wheelbarrows and workers demanded payment twice a day, because morning wages were worthless by evening. Hungary did even worse. Zimbabwe repeated the pattern. Venezuela followed. Lebanon followed. Argentina followed. Turkey still battles the same demon today. And now we arrive in the modern world. We no longer print paper. We print digits. We create trillions with keystrokes. We pretend that digital money is different. We tell ourselves, this time is unique. This time is controlled. This time is scientific. This time is safe. But every era has said those words, and every era was wrong. Because the true danger of paper money is not inflation. It's not collapse. It's not counterfeiting. It's not government abuse. The true danger is the illusion that money is real. Paper money, and today's digital fiat, has value only because we collectively believe the story written on it. But once people begin to doubt that story, even quietly, the entire system becomes a sandcastle waiting for the tide. The invention of paper money didn't nearly collapse civilization, because the idea was bad. It nearly collapsed civilization because humans are terrible stewards of trust. Whenever governments can create money without restraint, they eventually will. Whenever societies believe money is eternal, they eventually discover it is not. Whenever people rely on paper instead of value, they eventually lose both. This is the great paradox. Paper money is the greatest tool humanity ever created, and the easiest one to destroy. And so the real lesson of this entire 1,000-year journey is brutally simple. Money isn't paper. Money isn't digits. Money is trust. And trust is the rarest resource we have. The story of paper money is the story of what happens when civilizations forget that truth and pay the price. This is Money Archivist, uncovering the forgotten mistakes that built our world and the lessons they left behind.